Hi, I'm Kent.
And I'm Anna.
We're married, we make movies, and we believe that anyone in any circumstance can make a feature film.
Welcome to the Feature Filmmaker Podcast. If you want a career making movies, you're in the right place.
Hit subscribe to never miss an episode.
Let's jump right in.
Welcome to the show, Nathan and Meghan Leon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. So, quick introduction. Nathan and Meghan both come from creative backgrounds. They started out, Nathan started out in LA and did an Act One mentorship program for Christians in Hollywood, trying to sort of learn how to break into the industry, if that's right. And then that led to meeting Meghan, who had a master's degree in creative writing. And now Meghan sort of runs what they've co-founded as the Visionary Film Productions. Yeah. And she manages most of the producerial side, and Nathan manages the creative direction. And
but she's also a creative writer.
Right. Well, I'm sure that they're both very creative people. And
throw that in there.
And so yeah, welcome you guys. We're so pleased to meet you. We met you guys because we both have an upcoming film screenings at the same festival in March. And well, I guess technically your guys' is in February, the last day of February. Ours is the first day of March, the day after that. So
congratulations, by the way, on getting in there.
Yeah, thank you. And that's Grace by Night. So we really want to get into talking about Grace by Night, getting into some of those nitty-gritty details about that project specifically. But I'd love to just get like a little bit of background first. I'd like to start off just asking you guys, how have you managed to approach, or how do you guys approach family responsibilities with this crazy entrepreneurial, creative, obsessive thing
that is
independent filmmaking, right?
Yeah. I like to say I have a secret weapon, which is Meghan, and I'm going to let her take that question. Because she's the one who pretty much makes it happen. So
yeah, I mean, before we started our company and before we then got married later, it was really important to us that it was, a full life of what we're doing. We don't compartmentalize things. We work from home, we homeschool, we travel with our family. So I would say, really having the balance of just all doing things together. Our kids are on set. We encourage, the people who have children, have families who are coming onto our set to bring them during lunch breaks, that sort of a thing. So we really try to encourage a familial sort of environment because it's important to us. We didn't want our kids to be locked away and not with us all the time because it's a huge part of who we are. So I'd say that that's kind of like the basis of how we manage it. Now, the minutia of that looks a little different every day.
Right.
Sometimes we're up until 1 o'clock in the morning having business meetings with each other because it's been a crazy day. Right. But other times it's like we're having breakfast and talking about things and the kids are there. We're talking about budgets or doing phone calls in between. I'm working on things on the computer or, some days we don't do any of that stuff and totally just lock ourselves away to family time. So we try to not really conform to this idea that it has to be all or nothing with either side, and have a really good balance.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much trial and error has gone into that because we relate. So we were also homeschooling for a while. We actually, when we started fostering our two youngest kids that are now adopted, it just exploded. Like our life.
We had 5 kids, all under the age of 6 or something.
7.
That's busy.
It was too much to try to homeschool for us at that point.
Luckily, we lived in an area with really good schools, so we were actually really happy when we enrolled them into public schools. But like we were going to die.
But we definitely did the homeschool route.
And I am such a believer in the affordances. Every site has affordances and limitations, but I do think there are some special affordances to homeschooling that I just admire. So I'm already like, wow, in awe, impressed, and just so grateful. There's awesome people in the world doing good stuff like that, like really making family a priority in the midst of something that can so easily consume our hearts because because creativity is a work of heart, you know? And
Yeah.
it sometimes I become obsessive about it. And Anna and I have struggled for ages to say, like, how do we put film in its place? Like
Yeah.
I watch my brother-in-law who's a CPA. Well, he's not well, he's kind of he comes from a CPA background, but he's a financial guy. And he just
Mhm.
comes home and like him and my sister don't talk about work. They just hang out. And I'm like, look at this like home life that I recognize from my childhood. But I'm like, I don't think I've created that. Like I'm just always thinking about film and we talk about it too much. And so carving that
Yeah.
out is such an intentional effort. Like I'm hearing that. Like
For
uh,
sure. I think I'm the same way. It's, work is constantly on my mind, and, because film is so, you have to be fully in it to make things happen. And so I have to shut it off. I've learned, it took me a lot of years to learn, like, I have to stop working at a certain point and give the time to the family, because it can become just, obsessive, and not having your priorities straight, I don't think really helps projects. Because I used to just work nonstop, I mean, even when I was with the kids, I was thinking about the movie and the scripts, and like, I don't think that's really what God wants. And I think it's hard to turn it off, but I think, family needs to be a priority, even above the work. And I think that God blesses that when priorities are where they need to be. Maybe I'd be doing 5 more hours a day if I wasn't dedicating the time to the family, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be blessed. So I think God appreciates when we put things in their place and work hard and do what we can for them, in the career, but also know when to turn it off. And so, like I said, that's something I've recently been working on a lot.
yeah.
Very hard when you're starting a company and trying to, gain a foothold in the industry. And I think I'm slowly getting better at it. I still got a lot of work to do though. So work in progress, but that's the goals, is to make
Yeah.
sure that I'm not only working all the time.
I will
Yes.
say though, I mean, I feel like what you're saying with, your brother-in-law and sister, like, I don't know, I couldn't function like that. Like, if I'm not able to share like the thing that I'm passionate about, no matter what time of day it is, if I'm on 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 or whatever, like that would drive me crazy. So I think just being able to have the same shared passion, the same goal, the same interest, in the way that it's like, yes, it's our career and we have to shut off like the career aspect of it sometime, but still being able to like get really excited about what's coming next and like share that with each other constantly. I think that that's a really big thing for us and why we've had success in doing what we're doing, because of the open communication with that all the time.
I love that. Like you can't just shut off a part of who you are and be like, okay, now I'm just a mom and then I'm just a filmmaker. It's
Yeah.
like this is part of me and our family.
And letting it bleed in a way that informs. Yeah. It's
So
oh, go
sorry.
ahead. I was just thinking like in just terms of like so I don't even remember what I was gonna say now. I just blew it.
It'll come back.
It will.
This is, yeah, so this is a topic obviously we care about. The podcast is called Film and Family, and it's fun to find people who share that value. I love what you said about that family needs to come first, because while we hope that no one has to choose between one or the other, film and family, like that they're not mutually exclusive, you can do both. You do still have to choose every day between film and family in small moments. And people who, I don't know, tell me your thoughts on this, but this is something that's been going through my head. I see a lot of people who are like, let me just get my career first and then start a family once I'm stable, once I've got this taken care of. And maybe they do. Maybe they do get a career and then get a family. But I just think that kind of shows an order of priorities. And if your career comes first, it's always going to come first when push comes to shove. And you have to choose, like, okay, today, do I work on this or do I be there for my family? And obviously, they both
It's
need nurturing.
yeah, it's always gonna be
They
hard.
have to live together. But I just think if family comes first, then your film career will be better because of it, because everyone can relate to family. We all come from families. 50% of Americans will become parents someday. And right now, a lot of the stories that we see are not relatable, I think, to people who are parents. I see, like, I can count on one hand the number of portrayals of parenthood and motherhood specifically that I actually relate to, because they're not being told by people who have successful families or who are prioritizing their families. And so I just think it's so great to have people like you two doing that and telling stories that matter from a place of real lived experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think too, like, especially for like women as mothers and wives and also working, like there's such this polarization that, you can have it all, but then you can't. And then maybe you're just the career person, or maybe you're just the mom, or maybe you're just this or that. And I'm like, I think that that's really been a disservice to women in general, and saying that like you can have your priorities straight and you can have a reevaluation of your priorities as you go forward, but you can be a multifaceted person without having to be an extremist, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes.
So I think that like you're saying, seeing more of those portrayals of like realistic women instead of this polarization of like, oh, I have to be this or I have to be that. And the same for men. I mean, I feel like men have, especially in the last few decades, like been put into these boxes of like, you're this type of a dad, or you're this type of a husband, or you're this type of a career person. And I don't think that that's really being honest. Like stereotypes are there for a reason, but I also think that we fall into all of those stereotypes at different points in the day. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm on a call and I'm on this like big budget meeting, and then I have to go and make lunch for my children right after. So it's this idea of like you can hold both in your hands and you don't have to have them be heavy at the same time.
But yeah, and I think you're right though. I think there's a lack of story. I'll just call it authentic storytelling, especially in the Christian world, and that's what our goal is to do that. I think that there's so much potential in the Christian film world, but sorry, that's our kids, just so you know. If you hear anything yelling, like I said, homeschooling, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that there's a lack of authentic stories out there, and the problem is it usually comes down to money. So I think people who are starting off in the Christian film industry, they have this idea that it's this Pollyanna world of like everything's going to be great, and it's not always about money anymore. But the truth is, it is, unfortunately. It can be just as much as or worse sometimes in the secular world, as far as we have to have the movie fit into this box because that's what's selling tickets. At the end of the day, those are the conversations you have, whether it's a faith film or not. And so that can make it very difficult as independent filmmakers to push the stories that are true and honest about the lives that we're living. So that's what we're doing. We're taking projects to studios and pitching, telling stories that audiences feel again like, wow, that is my life. Like I do believe like that's true to how my life is versus just kind of this like fake version of life, which we don't really buy into. And I think it's important that we're authentic in the stories that we're telling, or they're not going to help anybody. So that's what we've been working on. We're talking to Angel Studios about some projects, and we're talking to Pinnacle Peak and Great American Media and these companies. But at the end of the day, if they don't want to tell the kinds of stories that we're telling, then we take it to someone else. So I think there's a lot of space to grow as faith filmmakers and to tell these kinds of stories that are honest with the troubles that we're having. So an example would be not every movie is the worst thing that happens is that they didn't open the Bible that day, because that's some people's life, but there's a lot of people who they have a lot bigger issues than that we need to take on, right? Because like we think of it like Christ went out to the broken, he went into the streets, he hung out with the prostitutes to try to help them. Like there's people out there who need help, and we want to try to evangelize with our stories and reach those people. So
that's a big reason why we've always stayed independent, though. I mean, we've had a lot of opportunities to, just work with certain places or different studios. And I feel like our highest priority has always been to maintain creative control, and we don't ever sacrifice that. So it's difficult to break two apart. So we kind of come with, a bigger front than just, let's say, someone who's coming with a script to a studio on their own. They need to attach a director and a producer and all of those things. When we come and because it's with our company and we've built it up and we own the story, we own the ideas, we own the LLCs from the ground up. I mean, there's more leverage that you have. And so I think that like I've always wanted to encourage people that you don't have to wait on someone else to start your dreams for you, to start your projects for you. Like you can go out there and do it for a lot less than what they say that you can and still make it look good. You just have to not sacrifice on all the other things and believe the hype with like, you have to use this crane and use that thing. And you must use a catering service. It's like, it's not always like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we really try to encourage people to think outside of the box, because I mean, we don't want to just be the only ones in this sphere, like what you guys are doing, where it's you staying independent and you're doing things more authentically. We want to encourage people to do it too.
Well,
Yeah.
and I like that because I've been thinking about that recently where I'm like, I would be absolutely fine making a film if I felt like the film with the values and the ideas that I'm trying to explore is picked up by a studio, I'm like if they give me final cut, I'll do it. Like it's like,
Yeah.
but that's not likely. I mean, usually if you jump into that too fast, and I won't say names because they're filmmakers I admire, but some of these people they'll come out of Sundance or they'll win Oscars even with these
Yeah.
independent films, and then they'll get sucked into like a Marvel deal,
Mhm.
and they'll go from making a $1 million movie to a $150 million movie, and they get lost in the machine. Like that movie tanks,
Yep.
their artistry is vacant. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing there. But I wanted to go back to something you said, Megan, is that you said like we don't need necessarily to like you expressed an inner demon that I have, which is this like voice that's always like, no, but if it's not shot on this or shot this way or done that way, and I get that voice. That voice changes depending on what like behind the scenes videos I'm watching or what interviews or what movies even. Like I watch a movie and I go, everything needs to be storyboarded, and then I watch like Tree of Life and I should say, there's no script. Like I shouldn't script anything. Like, and I do this because of like a certain degree of uncertainty that I have that I'm learning how to be creative with that voice in my head and how to balance that. But I do like this idea of like, look, there's no right way. We need to learn to like lean into our specific affordances, our specific talents, our specific stories need,
Resources
our
that we have.
resources.
Yeah.
I want to ask, you guys have distribution lined up already for Grace by Night, right?
Yeah, it was released in October, just streaming platforms. We decided to go that route. We had explored partnering with a lot of different studios for that film for its release. At a certain point, we were going down the theatrical route, and I have a lot of thoughts on the theatrical route for different types of films, but we were very passionate about not just doing something because you think that that's what every film should do.
Yeah.
So we realized after a certain point, like this isn't going to be the smartest decision for this film at this point in time. So we went forward with a straight, streaming release, and we're happy about that so far. It's one of those things where you want to like shout to the rooftops to people about your film, but you also have to know that it's not. One film is not the end or beginning of your career, that it has to be about a breadth of work. So yeah, we're excited that it's released. It's been receiving amazing feedback and a lot of awards, which, we're very honored to have been recognized for and received. We just really hope that we can kind of shake people up a little bit about what they expect from a certain genre.
Yeah, I think too, I think every filmmaker at some point goes, I just want to see my movie in a theater. Like that's kind of I think everyone's had that dream,
Yeah.
but very,
Watch it.
very few realize what that entails. And then also it all comes down to money, of course. So, it's how much money do you have for marketing and how much are the distributors going to put in? And once you realize that, for me at least, once I realize how it's all about the money that you have or don't have, and I can't judge my film based on if it gets into a theater or not. It's kind of liberating because if you always are pushing, try to chase that carrot of a theater, the theater is not the right move a lot of times. And a lot of movies that have been in theaters, they went there, but they lost a lot of money. So, meaning they also can't make their next movie. So I think, filmmakers just need to be smart about, if it's the right project, you have the right backing to do it great, but don't feel like you didn't make it because your movie doesn't go to a theater, because often the ones that don't make the most money. So,
Well,
we all,
and
go
film
ahead.
festivals can be a great way to get that theatrical release and to,
Yeah.
tour the film and have a premiere where everyone can come and have that experience without it having to cost, an arm and a leg and more than your production budget.
I think it's a
Yeah.
liberating point that you're bringing up because what we really want to do is get our film where the audience is. And the audience for our film might not be in a theater, especially if I'm making a low budget documentary or an indie drama. There might just not be enough spectacle to justify my stereo mix going into an Atmos theater. Like that just doesn't make sense. But that doesn't mean you can't have a really successful streaming run. Like we know that like some docs do well in theaters when there's big IP behind them, like Fred Rogers' documentary in 2018. I thought was superb. I'm glad it went to theaters. I went and saw it in theaters. um, I love that film, but other docs, it's like I'm never gonna watch some of these in a movie theater. It's just not gonna get out to that many screens. I'd have to go drive up to downtown, get a babysitter. It's just gonna be hard. And then You look at guys like
A
Mark.
lot of people have like the setup that's behind you, or that
Right.
what we have. I mean, people are either investing in larger screen TVs and like surround sound situations for their home theaters, or doing projector situations. So they're getting that experience in their home in a way that people didn't maybe 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
And there are some projects that it would be a good fit for. So, like a theatrical run should happen.
Well, there's some
But
like, we went and saw Twisters, and I was like, that's a good one to see on the big screen
like
because it's got the scale and there's a reason to. But our doc
Yeah.
that's releasing at ZIFF, I'm like, it's cool to see it on a big screen, but it doesn't have to
but the
be.
festival run is that opportunity, like you
Yeah.
said. Um,
Yeah.
you have a
Well,
question?
I just kind of want to get into what you talked about. So you said, the problem with not having good Christian media is money. And I'm curious how you guys have approached that as much as you're willing to share. I know numbers are, sometimes
The movie's released, so
sensitive,
we
but
might be able to talk some numbers.
if you're, is this your first feature film?
This
No.
this is our second, not including documentaries. So if you include documentaries, we've done like five probably
Yeah.
feature length, and we documentaries, shorter version, many more. But
Yeah.
Let me tell you a
narrative,
spoiler
narrative.
alert. I do count documentaries as feature films.
Well, there you go.
Anyone
say,
who's
Then we're on,
anyone on that fence, docs
yeah.
count, and
Then
they're
we're,
great.
especially if they're well made. So, but yeah, we're on. I'd say this is probably number six, that our next upcoming one. So, but yeah, sorry, I lost track of the question. So, what was the
Yeah,
question?
what does that
Oh,
look like? No, you're good.
Yeah,
Whatever
yeah.
you're willing
So
to share as far as like your approach to financing, how that has changed from your first film to this film over the
yeah.
years.
So one big thing I'm going to kind of preface this with is that I think too few people actually speak about this kind of stuff. I think that there's this gatekeeping community of a previous generation, and it drives us crazy.
Yeah.
Everywhere we go, we say the stuff that everyone in the audience that is older, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she just said that percentage. And I'm like, yeah, because it took us years to find out that information. It's like we're against all of that. So we like to talk about numbers and how we do stuff, because at the end of the day, like, we're unique individuals, we're unique filmmakers. If we don't share things with other people, like, that means that we're threatened and we don't have a voice of our own. And I don't think that's good for anyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, so our approach for like financing and all of that kind of stuff has always been kind of the same up until what we're working on right now. We've always done independent financing. We started out a long time ago, before we kind of went into the narrative and documentary stuff, with, like freelance, smaller video type stuff. And I think that if you build yourself up in a network with people that trust you with smaller projects, you're going to meet people that can finance your larger projects. I really encourage people to do that. Don't think that a project is too small or beneath you to work with someone with, because if they're hiring you to do a job, they probably have more money than just what they're paying you. So, build that relationship, have it be authentic, have it be genuine. Like, if somebody really gets behind what you're doing, expand the relationship, talk more about financing, talk more about like the projects you want to do in the future. That's always been really good for us, and kind of how we started out years and years ago. From that point on, it's always been independent financing. But it's with people that kind of work outside of the industry. I think that especially within Christian films, you've had to do that, because either it's people with diverse portfolios who want to see better quality in a certain genre, or they just want the experience of being able to be part of a film. And so we've always done that, people who are just really passionate about the same type of stories that we're working on. But we've met them through lots of networking throughout the years, going to the festivals, going to the galas, working in your own community, volunteering, that kind of stuff, like being present in an authentic way, not just to get your film financed, so that you're building up who you are as a company.
But then also, from a creative side of it, as far as budget goes, obviously making sure that every dollar ends up on the screen, not over staffing. Make sure you have, what we do is we hire small groups of very talented people who are very good at what they do, and eliminate the people who will just be standing around drinking coffee that you don't really need. So that's one thing. I've worked in Hollywood, I've been on those sets. Huge sets, tons of people, lots of money going in, and you're wondering where all the money's going when you watch the movie. So like, I learned from that, put every dollar on the screen, make sure that it's, production value. So a perfect example, like on Grace by Night, we have these shots that are like on the car, and it looks basically like a crane is like riding on the car, right? Like you have a car rig.
Okay, I needed to interject here. I would not necessarily suggest for anyone to do what he's about to say that he did to get those shots. Just
So
disclaimer.
I'll just leave it at this. Just you can be creative in how you do certain shots and get the same look. Like you say, you storyboard, and I do too. If you plan out properly how you're going to do it, and then sometimes that's just hanging out with a gimbal on like with a small cam, with a camera. With like they make cameras like the Reds, the Komodos are so small. Just figuring out creative ways that you can get expensive looking shots for nothing, basically, and you just like that's kind of the new way of doing things. I've talked to directors who've been in the business for a really long time, and they don't even know about the gear that's out there nowadays. So, because they're so used to the way of doing it very expensive for so long. And when you've had to make indie films for so long, you come up with creative solutions on how to get things done for cheaper. So that's what we do from a budget standpoint. A lot of the money goes into the actors, and I will say I always get I get a good camera, I get the Alexa, we get the Reds, we get all the, some things you can't cheat. Like if you're going to compete with these high quality movies, you need movie cameras, and you need a good grip package. You need lights that are good. But as far as, build relationships, if you meet people, you can get things for free, like locations. That's places where you can save on budget. So we keep it as tight as we can in how we shoot it. And then a lot of the money will go to the actors because those are things you can't avoid. And if you want to get faces that are known. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll say this, the films that we're up against, when I say up against, we are being nominated with in these film festivals, some of them and most of them are anywhere from 5 million to like $10 million. And we're in the top 5. And our budget, I'll say this, is very low. And I'll say it's way under $1 million. And I would say that when people watch the film, they are shocked at like the cost that we make it for. So my point is that you can be creative and you can make your films look as good as these very expensive movies if you know how to do it and you get creative with how you do it.
Okay, so I'm really impressed by even knowing that it's under $1 million because
I'll say that it's under 500,000.
Wow.
It's
Okay. I would have confidently guessed 1.5 million on the trailer.
and that's the goal we try to do. We try to
mainly because of production value and cast. Because I mean, if it was just production value, I would have said easily under $1 million. But with the cast you guys got, I was like, they had to have made concessions, and then you get SAG stuff happening, and then all of a sudden you're at 1.5 million and you blinked, easy. So
for sure, all the money went to the actors.
I will say to people, don't be afraid to negotiate with agents. Like, I mean, sometimes if you just ask and say, hey, this is what I have to work with.
Yeah.
Like, how can we offset things? How can we kind of negotiate to make this happen if they really want to be a part of this film?
If they believe in the script, if you wrote a good script or you have one, that can get their fees down. The actors may not like that I'm saying this, but we're the filmmakers, got to look out for each other. If your story is really good and it's something that they haven't made, which again goes back to be outside the box. Otherwise, if you're blending in, nobody's going to see anything new to it. They're not even going to want to do it, or they'll be like, I've already done this movie. By making something that's unique and using your voice and going a different direction, they're like, wow, I've never read anything like this. I'll do it, and I'll do it for cheaper. So if your story is good, you can negotiate prices down.
Okay, so I gotta interrupt, Nathan. I gotta chastise you. You didn't finish your story. What did you do? What did you do with the car shots?
Oh yeah. So
okay.
I have a buddy. So here's a perfect example how you can build relationships and save some money. I have a buddy who's a cop, and I got in the car with him, and he drove. And so that if we were speeding, because I needed him to go fast, no, the cops aren't going to stop us. He knows all the cops. So
Yeah, he's not just
I put a camera on a gimbal and literally like hung out the car as far as I possibly could and put the camera like on the ground while he hung onto my belt loop to like keep me in the car, which is really not safe. That's what she was saying. And I'm hanging out and I'm getting as many shots as I can. So, it's a little dangerous. Again, I don't recommend necessarily going that far, but
it's also with our camera too. So like we've invested in some equipment and, for B cameras and things like that. And I'm like, don't you drop that camera. I'm like, don't you do it.
But, there's a lot of filmmaking. You'll find ways to get the shots you want. And, Soderbergh's like known for doing it. He'll just go guerrilla style and pick up shots wherever he can. So just, you can find ways to get it done for cheap. And these are shots that would have looked like a whole crew was there. And,
No,
I did a lot of those kinds of things to keep the budget down. Or like we had night scenes where we're chasing a car and I literally had the monitor in my car and I'm just chasing the guy down the road myself. So you get your shots with your actors when they're expensive, and then do some second unit stuff. And there's some amazing, it's amazing what you can get second unit just with like very few people, and then
Yes.
piece it in and make it look like there's, it's all
Well, and
cohesive.
I just want to like sort of validate that idea, because you're right that like I look at behind the scenes on like even Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
There's shots of like the producer going into the woods and like getting shots of orcs jumping over the camera, and he's just sticking a camera into the leaves and they're just
Yeah.
jumping over it. And it's like that shot's in the movie. Like I saw him doing that. It's literally a
Yeah.
crew of one with like all these awesome costumes and stuff, but they just ran off and said, we need to get more stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you always go back to that root of at the end of the day, we get this done
Well,
and
and
we do our best.
that's where if you can find people who can wear multiple hats like that,
Yeah.
I feel like that's where we save a lot of money because we've developed between the two of us a lot of skills. We can all wear lots of hats. And when we get a small team that's very talented like that, you can do a lot with a little.
So can I verify,
Exactly.
Nathan, you shot Grace by Night?
I wasn't the DP.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I have a partner that I work with.
He did second unit.
I shoot second unit though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I sometimes will go out and shoot my own stuff.
Who was your
'Cause,
DP on Grace by Night?
his name's Ben Grant. He's
Okay.
a really, really talented dude.
He is.
But
Yeah, looks great.
that's how we would do it. We would break it up, and on the days with the actors when you're spending a lot of money, the whole crew's there, and then I don't even know. I probably shot like 15, 20 minutes just on my own that you piece in. So, but yeah, I think you're right, and you're the kind of people who get the movies made in this kind of like climate we live in with the movie business. Is how crazy it is. You have to be willing to wear a lot of hats, and you have to be willing to think of creative ways to get the stuff you need. And if you want it bad enough, you'll get the movie made.
Yes.
And it's more fun anyway, because I do acting as well. And when I act on a big, Disney set or some big studio, no one's passionate. I mean, maybe there's exceptions, but what I've seen is that everyone's there because it's a job. They're there to do their job. And there's not the passion and the teamwork and the excitement of indie filmmaking that I love.
We heard that a lot on our set. Many people who work on big movies came to ours, and they were like, the feeling of this is so much nicer. Like, it's nice how everybody actually believes in the project. We're making it like, it reminded them of like the film school days, and yeah, and then you kind of get lost in the shuffle on the big movies. On the big ones, it's like they're just kind of getting the job done and then moving on to the next one. So there's never even time to really care that much. It's just like checking it off the box and move to the next movie. So yeah, I think keeping a tight crew, of people and being careful on who you hire, like, hire people that are very experienced and good, but also have good personalities. And you want to not just their skill, hire them for who they are as a person. That's really important too, I think.
Yeah, taking time and doing a lot of interviews, a lot of like walkthroughs with people to really see like how they're going to be on set, because we never ask anybody to work harder than us. But people are much more willing to work really hard when they're on set if they're treated with dignity, when they're taken care of, when it's a positive environment, when there's not toxicity. Like, that's really important. And I think some people think like, oh, a low budget means that you have to treat people in a certain way. And it's not like that. Like, you can still provide really great experiences for people and get them good food. And it doesn't, make relationships in your community. I always come back to the food thing because I really believe like we have a lot of relationships with a very unique type of vendors here too, where you can get like poke bowls. People are like, oh my gosh, I get to make my own thing. Be like, yeah. And it's still under budget. It's like, I'm still matching what I would do with a catering service or coming in below. And it's just a better experience for others. Yeah. So
Did you do that just by reaching out to restaurants and seeing if they would
yeah, I mean, I just
do a deal
make
for a credit or something, or
yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like a sponsor thing. Like, we can have shout outs on social media. You can really encourage like your cast to be like, oh my gosh, this is the best X, Y, and Z that I've had in Birmingham.
That's really smart, especially if you have like any degree of name talent. That's smart. I never thought that's a great idea.
it is a great
Food can really
Yeah.
bankrupt you if you're not careful. I mean, like, so if you do it, you can save a lot of money though if you do it right. Like a lot of money. Like, she gave me a lot of money to do creative stuff that I wouldn't have had if she hadn't done the food right. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And and taking on those responsibilities that then sometimes maybe you'd have to hire on someone else to do and have their own, position to do those things. If you do them with an assistant, with an intern that you're helping to kind of teach and guide along the way, you can get a lot more done without having to sacrifice with the budget. Again, having another line item with another.
No, I love that. When I produced a short film when I was in high school and called a bunch of local restaurants, and there were buffets and bakeries that have to throw away their food at the end of the day. It was mutually beneficial for them to
Mhm.
donate their food that they weren't going to use otherwise and
Yeah.
get credit anyway. So that was
Yeah.
cool to see.
It makes a difference. It takes a lot of planning, as you know,
Yep.
but if you do it, we don't ever give ourselves, it's not a 3 month pre-production. Like that's crazy to us. I do like 6 months, sometimes even longer, so that we can make sure we have everything. And that's how you end up saving money is you plan and build the relationships throughout those 6 months. Makes a difference.
I think that's really wise. I mean, that's definitely something I'm seeing on the next film that we are producing is like, yeah, how much of this can I actually do myself?
You can save a lot of money with time, like
It's a tricky
wasted time.
balance. It's a
Yeah.
tricky balance, but it just depends on where you're at in your career. Sometimes that time is more valuable, and sometimes it's worth it to save the time or
Yeah.
to take the time, I should say, to
Whatever
take the
your
time to prep
resources
it.
are that you can put in.
And
Well, like
most
that
of
kind of,
us, go
oh,
ahead. Oh, I was just
I
saying,
was gonna
most
say,
of
it
us.
kind of comes back to the whole idea of
They both want to talk so
the
bad.
idea of like having a good balance with family though too, and recognizing like, hey, if I take on this other job, is it going to be a sacrifice to what I have to do with my family at this moment? Like, do I have enough hours in the day to really do that? Or is it better for everyone, even if it costs a little bit more, to have someone else do that job?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there are exceptions like that.
Definitely. Yeah, because you can't do everything. Um, I wanted to go back to family since you brought it up. You mentioned at the beginning that you sometimes have your family on set with you. Our first film was like the scrappiest indie film you've ever seen. And we had all three of our kids in the film. And
Yep. We do that too.
We do that too.
and
You use
we
your resources, you know?
that's what's the Taika Waititi and Hemsworth were doing an interview and it was like, yeah, my kid's in the film and so is Chris's kid was in the film.
Yeah.
It's cheaper.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I mean, no, yeah, we put them in the film and have them on set. You know, they love it. You know, for kids, it's like summer camp to be on a movie. You know, they have fun. At least ours do.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I mean, I think all my kids have been in all of our films since we started. You know, they're not always big parts, but it helps them, you know, feel like they're a part of the team. They understand how movies work and things like that. So
Within Grace by Night, I don't know if you guys have watched it yet or had, I don't, anyway,
I didn't
but
realize
Trailer,
I didn't
yeah.
realize it was released. I was thinking it
yeah,
was
no, you're fine. But we needed a screaming baby. And we just happened to have a 15-month-old who at any time I'd put her down and not have her on me, she would cry. So it worked really well. So, you know,
Yeah.
and you don't have to handle with the parents, be like, I already know what the mom's going to be like. So, you know, stuff like that where you can kind of fit the situation to work well. And then she was able to be with us on set like all day, which was really fun too. Just to have her around and like everybody gets to meet your kids too. And then it's that work family environment. They grow up knowing the people that you're working with. So it's not this like, oh, it's a foreign world when mom and dad leave and go on set.
I love that.
so
Yeah.
two questions following up with that. How this is just pure
Logistics or
just curiosity. W- how you don't have your kids on set every day?
no,
No.
no. Couldn't do that. I wish we could.
Okay.
No, we pick out which days that they can be there. So
We usually have family come in. We have really supportive family members, either, you know, like grandparent type situations, or, you know, I have a really close cousin who's come in, like stayed with the
or you
kids,
budget in
or
your
budgeting
babysitting,
babysitting if you need
Yes.
to for
which
part of
happens
the
a lot.
time, you know,
Yeah.
it's, and that's where you kind of have to say like, okay, it's a really big day. It wouldn't be fair to anyone. Like I need to make sure that all of my attention is on this huge effects driven day.
Right.
And can't have anybody showing up. Like
Right.
not at all. Like I need to leave before they're awake and I need to come home after they're in bed.
right.
So but balancing that out too, you know, gives them an opportunity to have relationships with other people that they might not spend a whole lot of time with consecutively in their life, like cousins, like grandparents, stuff like that.
Yes.
Well, and when it's only a few weeks out of the year, you know, because production's such a small part of making the whole movie, it's really like, especially for you guys, you're homeschooling, they're getting so much more time with you than most kids do with their
Right.
parents the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Like,
We try to remind them of that, but then they're like, oh, why do you work so much? Be like, well, you don't know how good you have it, kid.
Yes. No, so I definitely want to push back on any parent guilt that comes with this because even people with normal jobs sometimes have to work very late, very
Yeah.
frequently. So you do your
Yeah.
best. And I think that sometimes it's like, how do I make it does come down to quantity sometimes. And then sometimes it does come down to quality, and it's just balancing that. So yeah, and I appreciate you guys. My follow-up question was going to be, how do you, if you do keep them on set every day, how the heck, what if you actually need them to be quiet? Like,
Finding on set is very hard with kids.
Well,
Oh, muzzles.
we've done it. We've done it before. And I mean, there are times where, I mean, they have to be a certain age to really understand, like, hey, we're filming. But then that goes back to the more that they're around it, the more they understand, like, this is for a compartmentalized amount of time. During this take, you cannot say a word, or you're not going to be allowed to be here for a moment. I mean, I feel like that's just boundaries.
Yeah.
Just like in any other situation, it's manners, it's being a good person, it's following, a rule for everyone on set. It's not just that they have to behave that way, everyone there.
But they
has to
get
behave
one
that way.
chance. If they blow a take and it was a good one, then they're going to be taken outside or
But I also
farther
usually
away.
have kept them enough distance away where it's not an issue, being in a green room or, craft services area kind of tends to help a little
Yeah.
bit.
Well, and that goes to what you said about age, because there's an inappropriate expectation to have of a 2 or 3 year old to be like, can't you just sit still for 6 hours and not say anything? It's like
Yeah.
that's ridiculous, right? Like, and we've experienced that on our first film where we were like, oh yeah, Anna's supposed to be directing this movie, and our children are here, and they're completely dependent
Really be
still.
mom and
Why did we not logistically foresee this? That's
well, we flew
movie.
his mom out to watch the kids, but then when they were on set, she was with the other kids at home, and we had some kids on set, and we were like, oh, we should have hired someone else on set. Anyway.
We had a very similar situation.
Yeah.
And then also, grandma's not always ready she's not used to having the kids for so long,
Yeah.
Oh,
and for so many days. And so, yeah, adapt or die.
Yes.
Yes. I just hope I never forget, but I think maybe we all just will when we get older. And
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's probably, why people end up, isn't that what they say, that the next generation always think that they can do it better than the one before, which is why we're all still having children and going forward thinking that we can like conquer the world.
Yes.
And then everybody else forgets, and it's all just rose-colored glasses.
We
Right.
forgive and then we forget and then
we're like,
judge again.
and then we judge again and we say, grandparents are like, why are you guys so stressed out all the time? Be nicer.
Like you forgot what it's like having kids.
Yes, exactly.
Come watch them for a little bit so you can remember.
Yeah, our first film people watched and said, doesn't it
exactly.
kind of give you PTSD of being a young parent? We're like, good.
Yeah.
Our suffering.
Yeah.
So I loved, Megan, what you shared, the little tip about like don't be afraid to negotiate with an agent. And Nathan, you said you prioritize actors with your budget and putting it all on the screen and acting. So I'm just curious about how you guys approach that. Like, do you work with a casting director? Do you call the agents directly yourself? And then also, because you said you want to work with people who are really great to work with, great personalities as well as talented, how do you navigate that with bigger actors?
Because they all have terrible
No, that's not what I
personalities.
mean. I just
Yeah.
what do you do to kind of
Vet. Yeah, how do you vet
see?
that?
Yeah, so I'll say that it depends on the actor. I've done both and I do both. So I do have a couple agencies that they'll send me people. But at the end of the day, I always end up doing so much of the work that I actually haven't often used a casting director specifically just to go do the job because I end up having to watch all the tapes. I know exactly what I'm looking for. And I oftentimes, I have to go find them. And because I'm doing so much of that work, I was like, okay, well, we can save on the budget here. I'm not saying everyone should do this.
Yeah.
What I typically do have though is a casting director will send me maybe 10 people for a role, and they'll say, hey, take a look at these people. And I'll pinpoint maybe there's 3, and I'll ask her to have them send tape. So I'll kind of get like assistants, but I'll take the lead role of doing the casting, kind of the reverse of what it usually is, where it's usually, the director's kicking it and they're sending everything. I usually take the job myself. But yeah, I just found that watching so many tapes and then the casting director understanding exactly what I'm very specific about what I'm looking for is difficult. And yeah, I mean, if you have the budget for it, though, down the line as your films get bigger and bigger, I will probably lean into using them more than I do right now. On the films we've done so far, though, I've had success just casting myself. And
Yeah.
then all other, when the actors get bigger and bigger, then they'll at the end of the day, they don't care who they're getting the offer from. They care about if the money's on the table. So they're going to say, "What's the offer?" That's the question you're going to get. They're not going to even ask about your script. They're going to say, "How much?" So for better or worse, that's what the business is. And if you're the person with the money and you can give them the money, then they'll do your movie. And if you can't, then they'll say, bye. I don't have time to, you're not going to read it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really, anybody can do it if you have the money in the bank at the end of the day.
'Cause what I've
But
heard, and this is maybe the myth, is that you hire a casting director so that they'll answer the phone. But what I understand is that anyone can get IMDb Pro and find their agent and reach out to their agent and make an offer. And if there is money on the table, their agent is required to pass it along to the actor.
that is right. Yep, all that's true. So yeah, I mean, and obviously the bigger your budgets get, you would want someone answering the phone for you so you don't have to do it all. I mean, that's the whole idea. So yeah, I think on our next films, we will be using the casting director a lot
More
more.
for streamlining. I think when you're looking to at a certain number of cast that you're trying to fulfill roles for, and maybe some are a little bit more vague, not even supporting roles, but just like tertiary roles. That's where a casting director can really be implemented well. I think that like for I think too, it's personality of the director. And when you are very specific with a vision, I mean, Nathan is definitely like that. He's a very like, I want this angle, I want this lighting, I want the color scheme to be this. Like it's all done prior to in his mind as he's writing. So you already know who you're looking for.
Yeah.
For the casting experience. So
yeah.
I think that it's almost like if it takes longer to relay something than it does just to do it yourself. For the higher roles, that's where
And
you
we found often that happens where it becomes longer and harder to work with the other people than to just go get it done yourself. But that's been our experience in general of making a movie. It's like sometimes you end up wearing a lot of hats because it's just faster to just go do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a natural progression as well, though. Like as you scale up, you start to
Yeah.
have to delegate. You start to get better. I
And
feel
you
like
start to find the
I'm
people who can catch the vision quickly and kind of
yes, you start to
work
develop
with you.
shorthands with certain people, and so you can kind of expand out and say, okay, I don't have to manage you anymore, so I can bring on another
Exactly.
person, and it just
Yep.
grows. Let me ask you guys about unions, because that's another thing that we don't talk about a lot, but that changes your budget rapidly, right? Like if you're working with SAG,
Is Alabama a
or
right to work state?
So to be honest, we don't we don't we don't tend to work within union structures.
right.
Not that we
Not that
aren't now.
we follow all of the standards, but we've worked outside of it for the majority of our career. Um, so yeah, I think that
it depends on, your actors that you're looking to get. And I think that a lot of actors that people think will only do union projects, they're wrong. Now, again, this isn't something that actors are going to want me, necessarily to talk about, but like I said, they believe in the project. There are actors, even who, with FICOR, you can sign that and you can do both union and non-union. Not all actors will do it, but there are quite a few that will, because they need work. And honestly, like they know if it's a director that they like and there's a story that they like, they can do that. When you get up into the bigger actors, very few, if we're talking like A-list, obviously, those guys probably aren't going to do non-union projects. But working in the faith space, and we're kind of branching now into both kind of mix of secular and faith, but in the faith space, I don't feel like there's a lot of actors that are so big and so, I won't do that.
Yeah.
There are some, but most of them, if it's a good role and they like who they're working with, they can do it. They can work out of that.
Well, and you'd said that thing earlier about like, we got to look out for other filmmakers, and actors won't like me saying this, but like I'm an actor, not a big actor, but I'm an actor. And I'm like, no, I think actually actors want to do great work. Like they want lots of options.
People aren't offering them the roles because they're scared.
They're taking the roles that pay that aren't great because they pay, and they would much rather do something, even if it's not paid as much, that they're passionate about. And I just think, I don't think that ever changes, even for bigger actors. I think
offer the role. And for someone, it's going to be a great opportunity. They're going to love that you offered, I wanted to ask you, just to clarify for our listeners' sake, you were saying something about like FICOR. Could you explain like
What that is, yeah.
Union versus non-union, SAG, FICOR.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's like one of those things that people are like, "Oh, don't talk about it." Like, but it's, you know, being
Well,
a
the
SAG,
union pushes
right?
people not to talk about
And
it.
you know, there's a little bit of fear mongering behind it too, which isn't real. But it's people who are within the SAG union can basically like sign off to be able to do non-union projects, but they don't have the same SAG affiliation. They're allowed to do SAG and non-union. But there's a certain part of their membership that isn't quite the same. I don't, it's not pension because I know that it's all still covered. So, but it's some sort of fee or like acknowledgement or something like that. But I just know that some people are willing to not worry about what other people in the industry think about their SAG membership.
Yeah.
And other people are a little bit more concerned about it. Now, I do get if you're at a certain level and you're trying to build your SAG credibility, wanting to maintain that. But I think that too, it's just kind of been this, unfortunately, unions have turned into more controlling of the people within them than supporting the people within. And so we really try to encourage people to look into it, to do their own research about it. And so that it's not like, oh, I think that you should do this for our project, and then they feel uncomfortable later. Like do your research, find out like if it's something that they want to be interested in, and then move forward from there. Because like I said, that there's just a lot of misconceptions about what it means, like that you're lowering yourself on what you can and cannot accept for work, but that's not the case.
I also think even a lot of actors aren't even understand what FICOR is.
I
I
was
think
gonna
that, you
say
know,
I don't like I'm SAG eligible, but I've chosen not to join because I don't want to like be a burden on productions and say like you have to meet all these standards, and unless I got a really great offer on a SAG project that I couldn't take unless I joined otherwise, there's no
right,
reason for me to join in my
Yeah.
mind.
right.
But
Right. And like you said, I mean, it radically changes your budget. So like,
Yeah.
and a lot of it's going to the union, obviously. So it's, you know, there's no way we would have made Grace by Night for what we did if it had been union. It would have been impossible.
But every time that we talk to anyone who either is FICOR or who has considered it or is thinking about, joining SAG, we're like, we want you to understand that you're still going to be compensated appropriately. Like we still
We still pay to
follow
the SAG,
standards.
rates.
Yeah.
So, depending on who the actor is, some get more, some get less, but like we'll never go below the minimum
Yeah.
SAG rate. So it's not like they're getting treated poorly. In fact, like I've said, they always say they get treated better on our sets than anywhere else that are union. So I know the union, is out there, and a lot of times they say, well, it's to make sure that filmmakers treat the crew correctly. But in reality, it actually kind of goes the other way, we found. And we've had many people say, oh, yeah, we just get beat up on those sets. And like, you guys aren't union, but we're actually getting treated like 10 times better, and they love it. So it's all about who you are as a person, right? Not the paperwork that says you're going to do this or that. It's about who you are and whether you hold to the way you're supposed to treat people.
Yeah, if we haven't learned anything from everything that becomes somewhat systemic or political, it's that we cannot systematize character, right? We cannot force people to be good people. Like, no matter how many rules and regulations and laws and everything that we create, like, at the end of the day, people have to choose, even on film sets, to like treat people with dignity, like you said. So that's a really great reminder.
yeah, well, and this is just to go back to the other question. I still want to know how you vet cast or crew or anyone you're working with, just because I know that like in the early stages when everything's good, it's super easy to be amicable and for everyone to get along. And then when the pressure's on and you're in the heat of the moment, some people struggle to be kind, and that one toxic person can really bring down a whole set. And so
And maybe because of budgetary concerns, we don't usually get to spend a lot of rehearsal time with actors. Actors usually come in day one, hit the ground shooting, and then it's like, oh, now I'm getting to know this person. And there's just not a lot of like trust built up yet. So how do you guys manage that?
Yeah, so I will say this: like when I was like in high school making films, trying to learn the craft of filmmaking, I was horrible. Like I had a creative vision, but I was horrible at managing people, right? And that's something that I think comes with time and practice. Because I would be like a wreck. I'd be like, I just got to get this shot, and I'd be running like what you see, actually, sadly, professionals who are supposed to be professionals doing all the time. I mean, I've heard lots of screaming on big movies. And that's the opposite. They should have learned. But anyway, so over time, I figured it out. If you, as the director or producer, whatever you give to the crew is what they're going to feed off of, right? So if you're calm and collected, even if you're not in your head, you have to keep that on the set. You got to keep things calm.
Yeah.
It doesn't help anybody to get people running around and angry. And then, like you said, there's that one person who will start spreading, I can't stand this. And then that goes to the next person. So that's like a priority in my mind. Like I'm always thinking, how am I talking to this person? And how, even if I'm in a hurry, I'm calm and I'm collected about it. Because if you're not, it can ruin the entire movie. And it's your job to do that. You're leading them. So they're going to follow the example that you set. And like I said, I've been on sets where everybody's screaming. Directors that I know who they think that people feed off drama better and they work better like that. But that's, to me, I've never found that to be true.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a conscious effort. And if you're like panicking in your mind, which hopefully you've done enough pre-planning to where you don't have it, things always go wrong.
Yeah.
But if you've planned it properly, you've thought about those things that are going to go wrong. And sometimes you haven't, but you have an idea of what to do instead. So proper planning helps keep things, in a place where you've kind of foreseen some of the problems, and even if things aren't going well, just you got to keep a level head, or like it just has to be a conscious thing that you do.
As far as like vetting goes, I think what's been really important to us is having multiple conversations with people prior to, and like you're saying, then eventually everyone's on set and personalities are there, and maybe you didn't anticipate, oh, this personality and this personality, that's not going to work well. But maybe they're in different departments and you can kind of just be that mom and kind of pat everybody's head every once in a while and be like, it's going to be okay. Go and have a soda and we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, managing personalities is the job.
I also really believe in, talking to people, being very transparent with them as you're going through the hiring process, as you're going through the casting process. We do a lot of, I don't know, like test screening type, interview stuff with our cast where we'll have them read with us multiple times and we'll have them read against each, like over Zoom, just like over and over and over again to see like not just how they're doing the lines, but how are they interacting prior to even beginning, that scene. How are they able to like joke around a little bit? Are they able to be nice to each other and ask, hey, how are you doing? Things like that. Kind of tells you a lot about character.
They're basically Zoom rehearsals.
Yeah.
So we're kind of, with that, because we were doing this kind of stuff during COVID, but I recommend doing that anyway. I mean, before you fly somebody out, I think you can find out a lot on a couple of Zoom calls.
Yeah.
So,
but also, when you're on set and if those things are kind of flaring, pulling people aside and showing them respect instead of humiliating people in front of an entire group. I think that oftentimes people think like, oh, I'm just going to handle this immediately in front of everybody right now and make my point known. And it's like, that's just shaming. Like it's not
yeah,
good.
I mean, I'm very conscious. Even when I'm giving direction to an actor, I go over to them and I'm talking in a quiet voice. I'm not, hey, that was horrible. Do it again. Like you gotta be conscious of a person. Like these guys are like they're very vulnerable. So you can't, and you're an actor, so you understand. I always walk over. I don't live in Video Village. I always got to be right there, and I talk to them quietly where I can give direction that way. And those kinds of things make a difference, especially if it's an actor who is very jumpy and doesn't like to be critiqued or anything like that. You got to be careful with that. So, but yeah, I think
it has different acting methods.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the way in which a character gets portrayed can come from a lot of different ways, depending on who the person is who's portraying. And so you kind of have to be respectful of that, method acting, not like rehearsing a lot, not rehearsing. Like there's just a lot of different ways to get to that character, but being respectful of those things and also knowing what comes with each one, so that you are prepared as the producer, as the director of like, okay, this person is going to be going through a lot emotionally over these days, and really kind of anticipating how can I best prepare everyone for handling that.
And treating each person according to who that person is.
Yeah.
It's not an across the board thing. I'm sure you guys understand that. Each person deals with things in a completely different way. So being able to switch when you need to give them the direction they need.
And I think also just prioritizing the time if something does flare up, if things are happening on set. I know on our first film, there was some of that, and I felt worried about like taking the time to like, let's just every morning start together and discuss things before we get going. But we had to do it. Like we had to start taking more time to communicate and be unified before we could make something together. And it's just worth it to do that.
I also like how I slanted that question towards like, aren't actors the worst? And you immediately were like, actually the responsibility is completely ours, right? Like they will follow the example you set, right? Like no, that's really true though. It's like as a director producer, like our first film, I was producer DP,
Yeah.
and I had like my AC was a high schooler at the time.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
volunteering,
Yeah.
greatest kid ever. I had the day where I literally chucked a tripod in into
In the grass,
in the grass. It wasn't like
Yeah.
on a set or anything because we
Yeah.
like we literally missed a train.
Yeah.
And and um and I was just so mad. I just was like, I'm so sick of making this movie where nothing is prepared. We
Yeah.
miss everything by 2 minutes, and then the moment we miss the light, we miss the train,
Sunrise
we
and
miss the
yeah.
moment, and everything just keeps falling through. And I was so mad, and it's
Yeah.
like,
I
and
think
he was
there.
so emotionally centered. That kid, he was just like, well, what do you want to do next? Like,
Yeah.
can I help? And I just
We
I
needed him for that.
we
We
need
needed him.
we also need to
Yeah.
grow up and
Yeah.
become emotionally more
Yeah.
mature ourselves from project to project. We learn how to do that. So I love that focus on like sometimes we just have to learn to
Be the one
be the
to
one to keep that centered. That's our responsibility, no matter what an actor or a crew member does. So
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
being a
it's
parent helps with
being a
that.
parent helps. I will say, yeah, just learning about personalities, and like you said, it comes with time and practice, but it's never easy. I mean, movies are like the most hectic, crazy. You got money on the line, and every minute counts, and so it's easy to fall into the trap. But I do think this is why we take so long in pre-pro. That's what I always keep going back to. Is like the more you've done that, like I'm sure there are things that you could have avoided, and some you can't on your last films, right? And you learn how much, oh, I thought I needed this much time, I need more to prep. But yeah, there'll always be problems and there will always be things falling apart. And so it's just, you got to be able to keep your head on, while you're doing it. Because I've been in your shoes. I've been like I said, in high school, I was like going crazy. I was like yanking out all my hair. I was going so nuts about not getting the shots I wanted. And then you have to remember, these are just human beings who need you to help guide them to your vision. I couldn't understand, why can't they get my vision?
yeah.
Like you gotta understand how to manage all that. So
it's
yeah,
interesting. I've heard James Cameron talk about, I think it was James Cameron who said that he was kind of known for being a curse and
yeah,
yell person.
yeah,
And
right,
he was on set of like a Ron Howard film
yeah,
and was like, wow, he engenders like so much respect from his team and is just so decent to everybody. And he's like,
yeah,
I think I want to be more like that. Like it's like kind of like that was like his like I guess his come to Jesus moment where he was just like, I could be nice to people, like and maybe that
yeah.
would be good. And
And
um
they're both great filmmakers, just a different approach to how they get what they need.
well, it just shows that like the yelling and the cursing isn't necessary to getting
Right.
movies out of the gate. Because if he has changed at all, I've never been on any of his sets, so I can't tell you. But I like to
Yeah.
assume that he has, because reports say that it's not so bad making Avatar.
Yeah. He's getting older now. It's hard to be screaming that much at 80 or 70 or
Right,
whatever.
right. But you watch those movies, and they're still pretty great. I actually thought
Oh, he makes amazing
Oh,
movies.
yeah.
No, he's a
Avatar's
genius. That's
great.
part of the issue. I think, when you're that good, it's hard to remind, yourself, I need to help them see what I'm seeing in my head. And I think that was his, what was hard for him as he was younger.
I
Right.
think we've been talking about how, you need to listen to other people and you really need to be sensitive to like what's going on in a situation. I think there's also on the flip side to that, there are very definite times where you have to step in and be like, nope, this is what's happening. Everyone needs to stop doing this. We are changing directions and being firm with it. Like you don't have to be a jerk about it, but being firm, because if people don't have leadership, it's all just going to go crazy. And if you've treated people well up to those moments that are probably more infrequent, they're going to be a lot more apt to be like, all right, let's go. Let's do this. Like changing direction. Everyone's going to stop doing anything else that they're doing. And we're going to focus on this one task right now.
Yeah, if a fire needs to be put out, you got to put
Yeah.
it out. And otherwise it spreads. So,
We had kind of a situation like that where we had a location that on one of our last shoots where I called to check in and be like, hey, we're going to be there in about half an hour. Like things went a little long. He's like, well, I'm closing the shop in 45 minutes. I'm like, what? No, we had it like for 3 hours. We're supposed to be there for, he's like, nope, I'm closing in 4. So I was like,
talk
all
about
right,
missing the train.
everyone, I'm like, we're leaving everything here. we're going to come back and clean up afterwards, send a skeleton crew, like just go and do X, Y, and Z to get this done. And we did. We didn't get everything that we wanted, but we got what we needed. But it's moments like that where you have to have people's respect, and like you have to have built up the environment well enough so that people can actually react.
If they like you, you know, the crew will jump to it. If you've created a bad atmosphere from the beginning, like I said, the people are yelling at everybody, they're gonna drag. Yeah, they're not in a hurry to get over there, you know, but because they respect the way you treat them, they'll work hard and they'll actually feel like they're part of a team trying to get it done. So yeah.
I'll always remember Glenn Anderson, my first supervisor when I was employed, back in those days, when he was so decent to everyone. And I remember one day he just told us all, like, you know, like, having some personal drama in my life right now, I just need everyone to step up. And everyone just was like, okay, what do you need? Like, it was just instantaneous. Like, everyone was like, we have all ceased side conversations. We have, like, everything has stopped and we are completely present now. And I just remember he just asked. Like, it was instant.
Yeah.
We just
And he's
immediately
honest.
responded. And I remember thinking, how does one develop such a respect? Yeah, like, from people. And I think what you guys are saying is I mean, if we're going to be open with our Christianity, Christ, we love him because he first loved us, right? Like, he did it first, you know, and so that's our job as leaders, is like, you have to do it first. You have to treat people, even if they're not super respectful at first. Like, you set that standard, and then it comes back. So, well, that's
Yeah, no,
awesome.
I think you're right. You make a good point. I think remembering, you know, that if we're going to be calling ourselves Christians, then how we act matters, and it's more important than the movie. And I think, you know, I was almost became a paramedic at one point in my life, and we're not saving lives. It's not that kind of job. You know what I mean? So it is still, there's a lot of money involved, but it is not saving lives. We're making movies. So there's no reason to be going completely crazy, you know, and you know, keep it in perspective is what I'd say.
Yeah. Well, and that actually just makes the movie better.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like losing our minds doesn't actually make movies better, even though
Right.
panic. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good note to end on. um, Nathan and Megan, we're just
Thank you so much.
super
Yeah.
grateful for your time, you guys. I wish we had way more time to keep going into stuff, because I can tell that you guys are doing it. You're making films, and you're making a life out of that. And we're super excited to continue to, like, investigate your filmography and stay up to date with it as you guys continue to do stuff, because I can just tell that it's going to be going on the up and up from here. So
Yeah, what's the best way for our audience to engage with your work? Where can we send them in the notes to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think our website usually is where I tend to, you know, shoo people to, because, you know, you can subscribe, you can find all of our socials there, like, you know, contact information. So it's just visionaryfilmproductions.com. And that's it.
Visionary-filmproductions.com. Right?
You can do either.
Oh, and both work. Okay.
It'll go either
It'll go
way.
either way.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and you know, it's really a great podcast to talk about family and film, and it reminds people to make sure they prioritize properly. So I think it's great that you guys are doing this. But yeah, let's definitely stay in touch. I think it's exciting to see what you guys are going to be doing too. So we should stay in touch.
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks, you guys. We'll have you back on the show, maybe next movie. So
Sounds good. We're working on it.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you'll love the Feature Filmmaker Academy, a program designed to teach anyone how to finance and finish a feature film.
there are many resources teaching you how to do a great job, but what they don't teach you is how to get the job in the first place.
You cannot have a career making feature films until you've made at least one. Anyone can make a feature film using our proven model.
It's risk-free. If you follow all the steps in the program, you'll finance and finish a feature film, or we'll give you your money back.
Learn more at invisiblemansion.com/feature filmmaker or click the link in the show notes.
If you find this free resource valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review or share it with another filmmaker. We'll see you next time. Bye.